Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Cassidy Diamond. I am the Public Programs and Events Manager here at the International Documentary Association. We are thrilled to have you all here with us for this conversation, which I'm sure is going to be amazing, around Welcome to Chechnya, moderated by IndieWire's Jude Dry. I'm very excited. Before we get started, excuse me, I'm going to start as we always do with a brief land acknowledgement. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, which is on the occupied or unceded and occupied lands of the Tongva and Chumash people, who have been stewards of this land for generations. I would like to also give a thanks out to IndieWire for their support in bringing us this series this year. We have a few more left this month in January, so go on down to documentary.org/screening series to find out more. But I did leave out one of our supporters, KCRW, as well, so thank you to them. Switch that around on you guys. You're used to my normal, script, so there we go. Anyway, you're not here to hear from me. I'm going to hand it off to Jude to get this conversation started. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Cassidy, for having me, and thank you to the IDA for hosting this conversation. It is my pleasure to introduce the three people that we have here to talk about the film. That's, of course, David France, the filmmaker, as well as Maxim Lapunov, one of the subjects of the film, and co-producer, who will also be serving as our translator, Igor Myakotin. Thank you all for being here. Nice to see you all. Yeah, here we are.
Thanks for having us.
So, David, I have to start with you, of course. How did you start going about making such a film that clearly was had so many challenges and so many different aspects of it? I'm just curious about the seed of the idea, and then, how did you know where to start?
I think, frankly, Jude, if I had known how complicated it was going to be, I think I would have thought twice before jumping in. But I had read an article in the New Yorker about the work that activists were undertaking in Russia. This was like amazing kind of direct action work that they were doing to save people's lives, to rescue people, to hide them, to sneak them out of the country. So I called up the writer of the article, Masha Gessen, whom I had known for a long time. And I asked them if it would be possible to do something like this, and they thought so, and put me in contact with the people who were running the shelter system. And within a week, I think it was, I was there making my case to the people who were being rescued and to their rescuers to let me join them on this journey. I'd never been to Russia before, although I've been a student of international politics and dating back to the Cold War. But I really was ill prepared for what it would be like to work in Russia. And so I really learned along the way. And one of the first calls that I made for help was to Igor, who joins us here, whom I had met over the previous summer. He was a filmmaker living in Provincetown, and he was working on a Russian project on his own. And I called him and said, "You've got to come and help me. You've got to help me figure out how to do this." And it took a little coaxing to get a man out of Provincetown, but it worked.
Igor, what did you think when David came to you with this idea? I mean, you must have been more familiar with maybe how challenging it would be.
Yeah, it was exciting and scary at the same time, and I knew I had to jump right into it. But it's, as David said, it's hard to get out of Provincetown. I was living there for some time, but the idea of someone making a film about this was just so unmanageable and so attractive that, how can you say no to be working with David France and to be working on a project like that that is so close to me personally, because I'm from Russia and I'm queer myself, so it's very personal at the same time. So we started right away. When I started working, David was filming in Russia, and I was in the office with our executive producer Joy Tomchin, figuring out security protocols and how to move forward and move footage securely across borders and protect, how to establish secure communications with everyone. It was amazing, but also scary.
We were really reinventing the wheel. Like neither of us had done anything like this before, and we reached out also to Doc Society. They were working at the time on their prototype for their safe and secure standards that they were promoting as best practices for the industry about how to do this kind of work. So we joined with Jess Search and worked as a kind of a real life practicum for testing and helping to develop those protocols.
I hadn't even thought about getting footage across the borders. I mean, I was just thinking about the protecting your subjects, but you had to actually protect the film as well.
We did, because the film would reveal way too much. So we moved the clips immediately off of the cards from the camera, put them on highly encrypted drives, multiple copies, so that in case any were seized, we would still be able to get copies out. We overwrote the cards in the camera. It wasn't enough just to delete the images. Before we left any of the secret locations we were filming in, we wrote data over the top so that nothing could ever be recovered from those cards. And we made sure, obviously, that nobody saw us moving a camera in or out of any building, and all windows were always closed as we were shooting, as Maxim knows, because I met him there behind those closed curtains, and made the promise to him that we were making to everybody, which is that we would do everything that we could do to make sure no one would ever figure out where you are, who you are, and that you're participating with me in this making of this film. But we would be able to then lift up the stories of what happened to people there, what's still happening to people there, and try and and add some force and volume to the voices of the people who are trying to get it to stop.
Mm. And so at what point in the filming did you know that you would have access to this facial obscuring technology?
After. I made this promise to people, and that I would just find a way, and that I would make sure that they felt comfortable with the way that we were selecting, that it was reaching the highest level of disguise, which we called the level where even your own mother wouldn't recognize you. And that's what, when I brought back all the footage, Igor and Alice Henty, our producer, and the rest of our team worked in this kind of research and development process that took months to try to examine first what tools were already in use and available to us, what solutions other documentary filmmakers had come to, none of which seemed adequate to the task that we had. Many of the approaches didn't even disguise the people, they just made them look funnier. And so it was months in when we stumbled on this kind of digital artificial intelligence approach to masking the faces of 23 people in the film with other people's faces, real people's faces, and acting as a kind of a human shield to protect the identities.
And I know you used, that's one of the most powerful things. I mean, the film is so powerful, but I think that, the fact that it's not obscured, it's not just blacked out, and you're really seeing people's faces. And you did actually use, it's filmed queer people's faces who chose to use their faces, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Now we went, and Igor has many titles on this production. He started as assistant, and then went ultimately to co-producer, and also he was in charge of casting. And by that we meant Igor and I were scouring the universe of mostly of queer activists who had already joined their voices to this cry against the crimes in Chechnya. A couple of organizations that were already doing some work around that. We looked at their social media feeds. We took copies of their faces, and we used those with our VFX supervisor to see if the contours of this face would be good for covering the contours of that face. So we did a lot of paperwork in the casting before we ever reached out to anybody. And sometimes Igor and I would show up at demonstrations and try to pick people out of crowds and say, could we talk to you about a little secret project we're working on, which is kind of creepy, but because we couldn't reveal anything about the actual facts of what we were doing. But ultimately, the people that we recruited knew. We brought them in. We brought them into our bubble of secrecy, and shared with them details. And so they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew who they were covering and why they were covering them. And then they joined us for a lengthy, I think, 6-day or 7-day blue screen shoot, where we brought everybody into a blue screen environment where we ingested their faces in this algorithm to allow the machines to begin doing this deep machine learning technique that modeled their faces in a kind of pixel by pixel way over the faces of the people that we shot in the film.
It's amazing. It's so high tech.
It really was, yeah. And when we first looked at it, I was there with Igor when we first saw this technique, and we were shocked, but we knew finally for the first time that this was going to be possible. We had a movie that was almost already edited without any reason to believe that we were going to find a way to bring it out. I mean, we had confidence, but we didn't have a bead on any approach that was going to solve our problem yet. We hadn't even brought any of the previous approaches to the subject in the film because it was so far away from that high standard that we weren't going to bother them with it. And it wasn't until we were able to do this face doubling that we were able to bring them a sample before we began the extensive work, just a kind of a Photoshop sample saying, you know, what we would do is we would send a photograph or carry a photograph and say, who is this, to the person who it is. And sometimes they really didn't know. Often they knew because of the setting, but they were just, you know, it worked. It worked. We got the sign off from each person on that. And then when we did the work, and which was a 10-month process for doing the work covering everybody, then we showed everybody their scenes so that they could see that it, you know, how well it worked, so that they could feel confident. And at that point, we discovered that, for example, one person might have a watch that may have belonged to a grandfather that would be a telltale sign. We'd go into a standard VFX mode to obscure the watch or remove the watch or change the color of the watch, or, you know, doing those little things outside of the facial challenge that we had. And then ultimately we got this, you know, the security sign off from everybody in the film.
So amazing. Maxime, since we have you, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were when David first approached you about doing the film.
Максим, расскажи про то, что ты думал, когда Дэвид впервые к тебе обратился и спросил, если ты захочешь участвовать в фильме.
Я, конечно, был напуган. Я никак не ожидал, что, в принципе, вообще кто-то будет снимать. И любые съемки на то время, когда Дэвид только начал снимать, были для нас такой большой угрозой, для каждого, кто жил в шелтере, и для меня тоже. Потому что я готовился к подаче заявления, и я особенно боялся, что будут какие-то угрозы на семью. Поэтому было очень страшно. На самом деле, невероятно было страшно.
When David first approached me, I was very scared. I didn't really expect that anyone would be able to make a film about this because of how dangerous it was. And the danger was real. My family already received threats, so I was afraid that there would be more threats because of the exposure.
Я еще не знал, кто такой Дэвид, не знал, что он планирует. И только благодаря большой работе его команды, это Аскольд Куров, который на тот момент был с ним, Аскольд смог убедить, что все эти съемки будут полезны, если, ну, уже мы обговорили то, что буду подавать заявление, и они будут полезны, если вдруг что-то пойдет не так. И тогда я согласился.
And only through talking to me, with the help of Askold Kurov, our Russian producer and cinematographer in Russia, David and him convinced me that actually being a part of this film is going to be helpful, and the crew is going to take all the necessary precautions, safety precautions, to make sure that everyone is safe and sound. And that's when I agreed.
И потом началось настоящее преследование камеры за мной. Это было тоже тяжелое время, но было очень классное время. Спасибо Дэвиду.
And then the whirlwind of events happened, and the camera was following me constantly all the time, following every step of my life, really. But thanks to David and Askold, it went smoothly and was very exciting.
How did it feel seeing your face not looking like yourself when you saw the footage?
Что ты думал, когда ты впервые видел свое лицо, но это было не твое лицо, а лицо другого человека на твоем теле?
Я сначала... Это были такие смешанные чувства, очень непонятные, как это же я, а вроде не я. Но потом пришло такое, скажем, умиротворение, что ли, как не знаю по-английски сказать, очень большое спокойствие от того, что как будто бы это другой человек на самом деле пережил все эти события. И до момента открытия лица я как будто бы все свои вот эти переживания, беды и весь стресс, который со мной случился, я честно перенес на то лицо, как будто это он все переживал. Но потом это все вернулось.
When I first saw not my real face on my body, I had mixed feelings really. I didn't know how to feel, but then I calmed down. I realized that whenever I was seeing this guy on camera going through experiencing the same trauma, the same stress that I experienced, it's like this trauma and stress was not a part of my life anymore. He was experiencing it, not me. And that calmed me down and made me more relaxed in a way. And then the moment when the face was really revealed was very exciting.
Wow, that's a really interesting take on it. Had you ever heard him say that, David?
Yes, yeah. It's a very difficult thing to ask people who had lived through these traumas to watch this film, to sit with them and watch it, and that's the first time I showed it to Maxim. It was without the covering, and I know how difficult that was for him and his family. And there was something about putting it in the setting of VFX and then throwing it up on a big screen, because we had the great good fortune of being able to premiere the film in person with a real audience at Sundance, that I think helped give Maxim this distance from that past that he's been looking for. But it also, he told me, connected him to the past in a different way. He said the film helped him recognize and accept the sense of his own kind of power and agency and significance in this whole struggle. And that was really rewarding to hear.
Wow. You spoke about casting for the face doubles, but what about the actual subjects? How did you decide who to focus on? And I also would love to hear about Olga and how she's doing.
Not everyone was as confident as Maxim and the others who are in the film about wanting to, or about trusting the process, or about even finding space in their lives at this incredible juncture, this crucible that they found themselves in, to be open to have us follow them. Although many more people did invite us into their lives than appear in the film, frankly. And we followed everybody. So there was no question about casting as we were making the footage. it was only when we brought the footage back to the edit suite, which was also, as you can imagine, as encumbered by security protocols as anything else we were doing. Everything was offline. We had an air-gapped studio. We had no internet connected devices anywhere near the footage as we were editing it. So cell phones were taken from people, Google Watches were taken from people in order to secure this facility, so that, because we knew that our opponents were state actors and had the capacity as state actors to come to us through the internet. And it was then we put everybody's stories together, and it made for a very long movie, and then which challenged us to try and find the stories that were going to carry the weight of this entire history. And so it was by subtraction, actually, and which was a heartbreaking process. I had to meet people after we made our decisions in the edit who really wanted their stories told, and I had to tell them that we weren't able to do it this time. But I have these recordings that capture their lives in this way, and if they ever want them, we'll make them available for them.
Maybe you can do a director's cut.
Well, we thought about it, but we'd have to then do the same very cumbersome face doubling technology work, which is it's very expensive. But I think in this technique that we have helped pioneer with Ryan Laney, our VFX genius, it is automated. So that was the breakthrough that he proposed that made it possible to do this kind of technology on a feature-length film at this high resolution, in which some 80 minutes of the film has at least one person in it with a need for this kind of disguise. So it was expensive, but it was not as prohibitive as it might have been had he not found a way to let the machines take the work away.
And how's Olga doing? I really liked her character, and I thought it was a nice, balance to show an activist as well as the people who were sort of experiencing the brunt of everything.
Well, it's the activists that really drew me to this story. I mean, yes, it's a huge horror, but the fact that I don't want to dismiss this in any way. I mean, there's been no genocide, anti-queer genocide like this since Hitler. And it's ongoing, and the world has been entirely too passive about doing something about it. And that's why the work that Olga took upon herself, she saw as necessary, because nobody else was doing it. Somebody had to do something. Here's a woman whose activism in the past had been to start a queer community center in Moscow that was a place for people to have meetings, and they did an annual kind of arts festival. She was not intending to be in the business of kind of super heroics and rescuing people and putting her own life in danger. And as you see in the film, that danger ultimately forced her to actually leave the country like the people she was helping. And she has landed pretty softly, as if you can use that word for anybody who's been chased out of their country under threats of death. She's living in North America with her son, and still working at the Moscow Community Center, and still doing this work. She's working with a coalition of activists and organizations to be of service to queer women from the North Caucasus, from Chechnya and Dagestan and the other republics, and to get them out of there, to still work in the area of rescues and safe houses and the like. So she's an incredible activist doing still incredible work, undaunted by the threats that have followed her.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters were very compelling. Maxime, I'm sure the audience would love to hear how you're doing, in as vague terms as you can be. How are you feeling, your boyfriend, your family? We'd love to hear.
Скажи, Максим, про свою жизнь, что сейчас происходит, как ты, как семья, как бойфренд твой.
Сейчас намного лучше стало. Мы очень долго в последнее время переживали утрату сестры. Дети, конечно, особо тяжело это переживают, но мы посовещались всей семьей и решили на Рождество устроить себе маленький подарок. Многие люди нам помогали в течение всего этого года, и мы смогли отложить некоторую сумму, и мы поехали в санаторий. Несколько дней мы решили посвятить немножко лечению, отдыху на природе и такой релаксации всей семьи, побыть наедине с природой, с семьей и немножко как-то вот отдохнуть.
We're doing much better right now. For quite some time, we've been mourning the death of my sister, and children, especially her children, were in distress. But now we're sort of coming to terms with what had happened. And we decided that for Christmas, we're going to go away out in the woods, get a hut there, and just spend some time with the nature and do some self healing. Spend some time together.
Мы до сих пор не верим, что у нас практически закончились все судебные войны, и закончен такой очень тяжелый год для нас, и мы наконец-то, да, решили посвятить время только друг другу.
We cannot believe that the legal battles are almost over. It's been a very stressful year for everyone and for us as well. So we can't be more excited for it to be over.
Да, спасибо всем людям, которые в течение всего этого года нам помогали.
We just want to say thank you to everyone who has helped us along the way through these difficult times.
So sorry to hear about your sister, Maxime.
Thank you.
David, what is the state of sort of, what's going on with the sort of activist work, and how has the film's reception either provoked more pushback from the Russian government, or, has it been helpful in some ways as well? It seems like Maxime's legal issues are coming to an end.
Well, the activists have continued doing their work. Certainly David and the people from the Russian LGBT network who were so supportive of having their story lifted up by a film like this have been able to use the film in ways that have increased their capacity and the capacity of the other organizations on the ground. I know they've raised over $100,000 through the portal on our website, welcometochechnya.com, which goes right to the organizations and to Maxim and his legal challenges as well. And it's also given them some degree of safe cover in the work that they're doing. I know that they have since connected with Anya, for example, whose story was so abruptly lost in the film, as you can see. And I should add that that I was not able to approve with her the face doubling technique because we couldn't find her. And for the people that we couldn't find, we worked with their representatives at the LGBT organizations to do those security reviews. So the film has also been impactful, I think, for the activists on a political level, in that they've been able to show the film for lawmakers, the European Parliament, the UK Parliament, in lawmakers in Canada and in Washington, and even at the Duma in Moscow, where they've been able to cultivate strong relationships that have been productive in the kind of support that they need from foreign governments. It's also given impetus for, even in the last 2 weeks, a new round of sanctions, both from the United States and from the United Kingdom, finally putting pressure on Russia and and Chechnya to stop the anti-LGBTQ crimes there. Specifically coming from the UK, the UK ambassador to the UN specifically mentions the evidence as presented in Welcome to Chechnya as being evidence beyond doubt proving that these crimes are taking place. And that's the kind of impact that I think that a film like this certainly needs to have. Russia still denies that this is happening there. And Chechnya, the Chechen leadership still denies that there are any LGBTQ people in Chechnya or in the Chechen bloodline, although the evidence that we found and present in the film is irrefutable, and is forcing even them to remark. And we saw this with state television in Chechnya, where they presented a 15-minute denunciation of the film as being inaccurate and filthy and vile. I think they called it filthy and vile propaganda against them. But just getting them to respond has been very important and keeps them on their toes and keeps the people who are still in Russia, still doing this work, keeps them feeling like there's the eyes of the global community on what they're doing, and that they believe makes them safer.
Have you personally been targeted by any harassment? I mean, you're much more the face of the film, or your name is.
Well, we had received stern warnings about the film, especially as we were bringing it around in European film festivals before COVID shut us all down. And we were concerned. These were credible communications that we had with people. So we made sure, for example, at every film festival to have physical security, around us as a team. We never really split up. Maxim was there with Bogdan and even his mom, and we all just moved together with people who knew how to take care of us. And then we were sent home by the pandemic. So who knows what might have continued, but we feel like the entire world's been locked down in a way that is protective of so many of us. Although obviously people who are still in Chechnya are facing even much more challenging pathways to try to get themselves out of there because of the pandemic.
Right.
1 second. Окей. Я сейчас, пока Дэвид как раз вспомнил о путешествиях на Санденс и в Берлин на фестивале, на самом деле среди всех этих, скажем, многих проблем, которые были в моей жизни и в связи со съемками и выходом фильма, на самом деле у нас есть очень много побед и очень классных впечатлений, что ли. Богдан сделал предложение на кинофестивале в Санденсе, и мы с ним сейчас планируем нашу свадьбу. Сейчас у нас есть 2 детей, которыми воспитанием тоже мы занимаемся. И это очень, на самом деле, классная, наверное, новость. У нас уже, сами того не желая, образовалась такая любящая семья, где нам приходится быть родителями, и это очень большое счастье. Тоже хотел этим поделиться сейчас, раз заговорили о суперфестивалях. Igor?
I just wanted to mention one thing, that now that David mentioned the film festivals that we went to in Berlin, where my mom was there as well, and just seeing her happy was so special. And through this experience, we've also had many victories and good moments. For example, at Sundance, Bogdan proposed to me. That was a very special moment. And now we're planning the wedding, and we're taking care of my sister's children right now. So we feel like a wholesome family at the moment, and we're very excited about it. So just wanted to say thank you for all these experiences.
That's such wonderful news. Congratulations, Maxim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that is a uplifting note to to wrap up on, I think. So happy to hear about that, Maxime, and to you and Bogdan. And David, thank you so much for all of your activism. You truly embody filmmaking as activism, and you make wonderful films doing it as well. I really feel that you're in a continuing the tradition of queer cinema at its best.
Thank you, Jude. And thank you, IDA,
you.
for putting this together. And it's been wonderful to be reunited with Maxime and Igor, who's just across the river, but I never see, and with all of you. So thank you for this.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.